Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of Generation to Generation, Bridging the Gap with Rex
and Eva.
And we're so excited to hang out with you today. It is Tuesday for us.
It is.
We're
really pushing it to the limit with our Tuesday release dates now.
We are, but we're living life.
We are.
It's
we're busy
life.
People sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes we have nothing going on, and then sometimes it's like we don't hardly see each other for 2 or 3 days except at dinner time, and it's just kind of funny.
It is kind of funny, but it's a good season. It's a new year.
Yep.
At our church. We're in 21 days of prayer, which is always good.
It is. So why don't you tell people what we're talking about today? You were the one who presented the idea today. So
yeah. Well, as you know, I'm always reading a book. I love books.
I do too.
And
different books than you, though.
I'm amazed, though, sometimes how long it takes a book to get into my hands. The book that I am going to mention today was published in 2018.
Wow.
So actually, this is 6 years old, been on the streets for 6 years, and I became familiar with it about a year ago. But at any rate, ordered it and have just been reading it recently. I'm about halfway through, but I love it. And so I just threw some ideas out to you,
Yep.
and you said, yep, sounds good. But here it is, The Coddling of the American Mind. Subtitle is How Good Intentions and Bad Ideals Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure. So the coddling of the American mind, before we even get into that, what would you as an 18-year-old suspect that is about?
I think it's about how a lot of America is only telling people what they think they want to hear, not what actually is happening. And so it's a lot of judging a book by its cover kind of thing. It's, all teenagers are lazy and don't have any aspirations, and they're all extremely liberal and all these things. I think that's kind of where it's coming from, is they tell us what they think we want to hear, not what is actually happening, which is kind of funny because I'm writing my thesis on that, and one of the lines in it is literally the American school system, because it's about education, is teaching students what to think, not how to think. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. That's what a lot of America is doing right now. What did you say earlier this morning? They're group thinking. Groupthink.
Yeah.
They're participating in groupthink, which is where they just all follow one person's ideology or something, and they think it's okay and right. And it's like when we did the episode on amusing ourselves to death, people have started laughing so much they're not thinking for themselves anymore. People have started, just following others. They've idolized others. They've stopped thinking for themselves.
Yep. And there's a lot of that, unfortunately, going on in this country right now. And I suspect that's a trend probably globally. I have not researched that. But groupthink, let me just lay that out from a historical perspective. That you and I were talking about this briefly last night. That's Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. If you look at it, what happened to the nation of Germany through the leadership of Adolf Hitler, that's exactly what happened. It was groupthink. And one of the characteristics of groupthink is that even when people realize that something's wrong, they're afraid to stand up and challenge it for fear of persecution.
Yep.
And you see that a lot in this country
Yep.
right now, because that fits into cancel culture.
Yep.
Oh, I really don't agree with that, but I can't say that because somebody might cancel me.
Yep.
Or somebody
Yep.
might call me out. And so, yeah, this idea behind groupthink, it's a real thing. And to your point, hey, the whole education system is designed to teach people not what to think,
Yep.
but how to think.
But I also want to highlight on this because a lot of times people just like to throw around the term, he's Hitler or she's like Hitler or things like that. When we say groupthink and are comparing it to Nazi Germany, we're not saying there is a Hitler-like figure out there. It's just this ideology of almost like, I don't know, think back to high school where there was that one popular person that everybody kind of grouped around and followed. There was always somebody they followed, and what they said went. That's kind of what's happening, is there's like cliques of people, but it's massive. And these people are just flocking to maybe not a single person, but they may be thinking to a single ideology or a single mindset or worldview, and they're just adopting it and idolizing it because, that's what's cool, that's what's trendy, that's what people are doing, and things like that. And so they aren't thinking for themselves. I mean, and the same thing can be said about Christians. A lot of people, give their life to Christ and they show up to all the services, but they don't actually ever get into the Bible for themselves, and they don't ever, learn about it themselves. And they can also be considered, group thinkers when they just let the pastor tell them everything they need to know, and they don't do any of the research and learning on their own, because then they're just following with the pastor. But the pastor's human. He's gonna have fallacy, and he's not perfect. And so if you don't do the research for your own, you could be led to what is the word?
Heresy?
Heretical. There we go. Is that right?
Heretical thinking,
because you haven't done the research for yourself. And so it's not just, a political thing too. It's in the classroom, it's in the church, it's everywhere. And so you just have to identify for yourself when you're going to go in and research something and when you're going to let somebody tell you what's going on.
Yeah, my dad, your grandfather, used to call that parroting. People have a tendency to parrot what they hear.
Children do it wonderfully.
Especially if they think it's real cool or it's trendy, they will parrot it. But then if you ask them to explain it, they don't have a clue. Because they didn't research it. They haven't really thought about it. They haven't developed their own process over it. And so anyway, you got to be careful of that. And so the book, again, The Coddling of the American Mind, let me give you the background of it. It's written by two guys. One's a psychologist, one is a lawyer. So they talk at it from a psychological angle and also an ethical, legal angle about what's happening specifically in American colleges and universities. And it's a fascinating read. Again, I'm only about halfway through, but their introduction, they create this mythical story. They're like, hey, we wanted to write a book about the great truths of life. And so we went to Mount Olympus in Greece and we climbed it and we found the oracle, and the oracle told us these three things that we were literally blown away by. And what he told us was what we considered the three great untruths. So they kind of made a satire out of it. And then in their introduction, they go, now, you know good and well, we did not go to Greece. We did not climb Mount Olympus. We did not find an oracle. But if we had, we feel like the oracle would have told us these three lies that are pervasive in culture at the moment. And here's what they are. And they're twists on very what we call common truths, but we've twisted them to become untruths, but people are accepting it as truth, if that makes sense. And here they are. Let me give you the real one first, the common truth that's people have accepted this for thousands of years. Yes. What?
No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Here's the first truth. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Okay. The untruth that this culture is believing is what doesn't kill you makes you weaker.
Yep.
Okay. The second one, never trust your feelings. That's the ancient wisdom. The current culture, always trust your feelings.
I have things to say about that, but I'll just tell the next one.
We'll come back to it. Then the third truth that has been turned into an untruth, the truth, life is a battle between good and evil. That is an ancient truth.
Yeah, it's biblical.
It is biblical. The current untruth is life is a battle between good people
Operative word
and
there.
evil people.
Yep.
That's a dangerous twisting of three
100%.
ancient truths.
Yep.
And they're untruths, but our current culture pretty much taking them as truth. So out of those three, do you have one you really want to just jump on and talk about?
So so what doesn't kill you makes you weaker. Okay, I'm going to go through all three of them real quick
Okay,
because they're great. I think that one has been adopted into the victim culture we have where, the mindset of you wronged me, I'm hurt, I can't recover kind of thing. They deserve to suffer because they hurt me, right? But that's a twisted mindset, first off, that isn't built on forgiveness. But two, sometimes it comes from the most petty things, right? Because somebody doesn't know your history, or somebody doesn't have or they don't actually understand the restaurant menu where they work. And so they have to, like, you may accidentally get the wrong thing in your meal or things. And so it's small things like that it's like people have taken and turned into daggers. And I think that there's a lot less forgiveness. And that whole mindset comes from a lack of forgiveness, a lack of understanding, a lack of compassion in our culture that is always, it's very self-idolizing, like, everything's about them. The world revolves around them. And I mean, I'm guilty of it too. It's not like I'm not. I have to sometimes check myself and be like, Eva, not everything is about you. You gotta chill out for a second, because sometimes I just get so wrapped up in what's going on in my own life. I forget, the person driving next to me on the street has their own life, and the person walking into the store who's making a fuss has their own life and their own issues and everything. And when you put that into perspective, you just kind of have a lot more forgiveness. But something that I've learned too, that I'm going to kind of build off of, is something I say to myself all the time, is if it doesn't bother me in 10 minutes, I'm not going to worry about it.
Come on, girl.
And that's something I do in every single thing. If my order's wrong, but it's still good, I'm not going to drive back around and complain about it, because it's not going to bother me in 10 minutes. Now, if I get coffee in my drink, and I don't drink coffee, yeah, I will go back around, because now that's money wasted. That's a drink that I wanted that I can't have. That's still going to bother me in 10 minutes.
That you could have brought to Dad, but okay, I get it.
You know what I mean? But it's just small things like that. Like, if, I get frustrated with somebody bumping into me in the store, is this really going to bother me in 10 minutes? No. But, if a cashier, accidentally double scan something, then I'm going to correct it. I'm not going to go out with her malice and be like, you don't know how to do your job. I'm just going to be like, hey, I don't want to pay for two things when I'm only, paying for one. And so I live by that mindset. And I tell that to people all the time when they get frustrated at things. I'm like, is it really going to bother you in 10 minutes that, you have pickles on your sandwich? Like, don't go make a fuss about it. Don't go, berating somebody at the counter, because you can easily pick the pickles off your sandwich, and it's just small things like that. And that mindset flip has also helped me. Also, something Mama has taught me many, many years ago is you don't know what's going on in someone else's life, so don't judge them because of that. And it happened from some time where somebody came, so mad into the nail salon and started slinging things off. And Mama initially wanted to go, what a horrible person. But then she was like, wait, I don't know what's going on in her life. Her kid could be in the hospital, or she could be in the middle of a divorce, or different things like that.
Right.
And so you don't know what's going on. And sometimes that anger comes out on unsuspecting people. And so that mindset of what doesn't kill me makes me weaker is all, I feel like, comes from the fact of people losing that compassion, losing that rational mindset that can say, hey, what's going to happen? And talking about that rational mindset, that bridges actually really perfectly into the next untruth, which is the untruth of fragility, the untruth of emotional reasoning, which is always trust your feelings. And I was so excited when you told me about this one, because I just got done studying the Enlightenment era, which came right after the Renaissance in history. And it was this whole mindset of philosophers going, okay, I know that I can see this or I can feel this, but how can I justify it in my own mind? And it was, they took to proving the existence of God, proving their own existence, and different big questions like that. And a lot of it had to do with doubt and reason, and they chained things together. They broke things down to their simplest fact and pieced them together so that they had their own understanding of it. They did their research. They spoke up about it. They did, they thought, but then immediately after like 70 years, it went straight back to the palm of our hands. I think that there's been a bit of desensitization and a less effect that some of these events have had on generations. And so I think for each person, it's something different that shaped them. I don't think it was this big, rally group thing that 9/11 and World War II and Vietnam and all these things were. I think it's a bunch of small things. For each person, it's been a little bit more difficult for them than the next. And it's always something different because of the algorithms and all these things. Some people will have no idea what's going on over in Ukraine or in Israel and that war and things, because it never makes their news feed. It never makes, where they get their information. And so they're more affected by, something happening with the border or different things like that. And so there's just so many different small things. And so there hasn't been a big thing, I don't think, that has affected our generation. But I think because of the media, for every person, it's a little different.
Yeah, and those are great points. And I'm just sitting here listening to you talk, even. I'm like, my goodness, that's it. Social media may be the challenge of your life because people don't know what to think anymore. Well, we see that in all of the surveys that young people, especially your generation, you're just looking for something real. You're looking for something authentic. And there's so much fake news and AI. We don't know where that's going to go. I think there are some phenomenal, fantastic uses for AI,
100%.
but there's some extreme danger in AI. And so it goes back to what do I even believe and why am I being influenced in the manner that I'm being influenced by people that have this social media following and what makes, and to your point also, we tend to jump from thing to thing to thing. It's just this constant news cycle.
Attention as much.
We haven't even talked about the LA fires. That's the big thing going on news-wise now.
We have my entire life, there's been, or for my entire, I guess, high school, middle school career, there's always been some social movement that's been going on, especially since middle school with COVID and all of these things, and Black Lives Matter, and then now the Palestine, and then, Roe v. Wade. There's always been some big social, moral dilemma that's been going on between us. And so I think it's gone from less of a physical thing to more of a mental thing. And I think that's why what we've been talking about, the coddling of the American mind, it's such a dangerous thing that's happening because we're seeing a lot more of psychological and emotional attacks on people, especially younger generations. We're seeing a lot of manipulation. We're seeing a lot of fake news and a lot of, covering up the truth in the media and things like that. A lot of censorship, things like this that are happening that are that's fueling the fire that's coddling the American mind. We don't have a war that everybody's rallying behind to go fight in. There's a war on the minds. There's an attack on the minds. There's an attack on the ability to think. And I think that's something that not enough people are talking about because they don't understand it and they're victims to it.
That's so good. And, when you start to peel that onion back, that leads us back to the third point. The ancient wisdom is life is a battle between good and evil. What the current culture has turned that truth into, in terms of an untruth, is life is a battle between good people and evil people. And if you don't think like me, if you don't affirm whatever I wrote in an email, if you don't follow my social media post, if you don't like it, well, you don't like me.
You don't think exactly what
I
think.
Exactly. And therefore, you're an evil person.
And
we just categorize. And it's not. That life is so much more than that.
It's not so black and white.
It's not. And so you've heard me say this multiple times, and I know some people won't agree with this, but the current election, what we turn that into is if you voted Democrat, well, you're a baby killer. Well, if you voted Republican, you're a racist. That's basically what that got turned into.
100%.
Hey, people are more than that, but we've got to come to the table where we can put our biases on the table, we can put our concerns on the table, our dislikes on the table, and civilly discuss them with each other.
You have to have a diversified audience or you become stagnant.
And that's part of our podcast and what we hope to do with Daddy Daughter. Hanging out on a Tuesday afternoon, talking about life, and it's time for you to go to your next appointment. Yes. Am I correct?
Yep, I got work.
All right. So you got work. That's a good thing. I've got work. So regardless of what happens, let's always remember, let's
always be able to talk. There you go.
Thank you. From generation to generation.
Hey, if you enjoyed our episode, make sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a review because it helps people who don't know about us hear our message. And if you want to follow us on our socials, follow us at G2G_podcast on Instagram and Generation to Generation on Facebook.